everyone. My name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. And we are so thrilled to be offering one of the first of its kind digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments, enabling parents and children to connect from all around the world. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions and to create space for all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments, both socially and politically, that will enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Monday. We actually dropped a thought piece this past Tuesday, so definitely be sure to meander over to the website and check out our online content. Now, if it is the case that you're looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available wherever podcasts are playing, and we provided you with access to a few links down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like these conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. I'm not that great at growth strategy, but if you found some value in what it is that I'm putting out, then definitely participate. Let's get into it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is mental health. On the conversation on mental health this week, I want to talk about the relationship between attention and engagement. And there's so much conversation happening everywhere I go around attention and around people self-classifying themselves of having an attention deficit disorder, when we fail to think about attention as it relates to engagement and how our level of an engagement is going to have a role to play in our capacity to attend. And so I want to have this conversation because in my professional career, even in my academic career, I've had always a very special interest in memory systems. And I started off in my career working in environments where it was really about, well, how do we manage the flow of change that happens with information? How do we deal with changes that are so frequent but sometimes so nuanced that it's easy to get things mixed up? And so I would leverage my background in cognitive neuroscience, specifically in memory systems, to provide solutions to the businesses that I was working in around how we manage the memory gap. And so the memory gap is technically called proactive interference, and that's what happens when information starts to interfere with one another, when there are just small nuanced changes in information, which is typically the case in business. And so I would build training programs that create distance between old and new information that wasn't typically there, just by the way that I would engage participants in the communication and the updates of the changes that now were relevant and had implications. There's impact in misinformation, and so we wanted to minimize that impact by increasing retention. And increasing retention involved, of course, engagement and attention. And engagement is important because if you want to catch people's attention, you need to keep them engaged. And a lot of the times, if it is the case that we're expected to sit still and be quiet, that in and of itself is taking so much mental energy that it takes away from our ability to attend. And so when people have an issue with you and your attention and call out that attention deficit a deficit, when really you're spending a lot of your attention really focusing on trying to sit still, if that's not your disposition, if you're someone who likes movement, and I am someone who has loved movement, but it doesn't take a lot of effort on a facilitator side for me to be engaged. I can get engaged regardless of what kind of facilitator is in front of me. But some people, they need a certain kind of style, they need a specific kind of delivery to be engaged. But I think that because I'm interested in learning, because I'm curious curious, I can really have an issue with the style of communication and the learning that I'm retrieving, but I'm interested in the information itself. So I can be engaged, and with that, I can pay attention. And so there's often this gap where people talk about, people who have with children who have an issue with paying attention in school can spend hours playing video games. Like, what's that? Like, what's that selective attention? It's not, it's engagement. They're engaged. The video game is stimulating them in the right ways where they can now attend. And so I think a lot of the times we think about attention without thinking first about engagement, and recognizing that engagement is very critical. If you really do have objectives tied to the information that you're relaying, to the outcomes of that information landing, then you need to think about engagement. And I think that you need to think also for yourself about, well, what engages you? And a lot of us don't know that. We don't know why it is the case that we struggle to pay attention in certain arenas, and in other arenas we could spend hours doing it. And what about those situations help us feel engaged? Is it the color? Is it the dynamicism? Is it the amount of information coming at different size? Like, different kinds of things engage different people. And if you don't know what keeps you engaged, then it makes it difficult to pay attention where you need to. And I think that this is important because we can find ourselves engaged in settings that are not necessarily our disposition if we play on the things we know that engage us, which means if we give ourselves the tools to focus our attention on the things that do engage us and help us pay attention. And so for me, like, I can be engaged when I'm actively participating, when I'm actively involved, when my questions are welcomed, when my curiosity isn't seen as a deterrent. That engages me. Where I find myself making more of a conscious effort and burning more energy to get engaged is when I'm just expected to be like a passive participant. And so this is why I personally have like a bone to pick with facilitation that involve passive participation. Like, if your content isn't engaging, then don't ask a large group of people to be passive participants and then get irritated when they're not fully attending to your information, when you haven't built your information or the presentation in a style that engages people enough that you catch their attention. And so I want to have this conversation because I think a lot of people unnecessarily self-identify themselves as having a deficit in their attention, not recognizing that they're just not engaged. And they're not engaged because maybe the mediums by which information has been communicated or shared with them just haven't been their cup of tea. And I think that you can only know how to support yourself in building the attention span that you need for the specific environments that translate as success for you if you know what it is that keeps you engaged. And we don't have enough conversations about the different things that keep us engaged and the different things that could potentially keep you engaged. It could be the style of communication. It could be the way that the presentation itself is delivered. It could be a mix, which means there's aspects of that presentation which is sort of abstract. There are different aspects that are more self-taught. Like, there are different things that you can look forward to that help you to pay attention, that help you to engage, so that you can absorb that information. And maybe there's a competitive component to it. If there isn't, maybe you can add a competitive element for yourself if that's what helps you stay engaged. Like, there's different aspects for each and every one of us, and like the list is endless, that can build engagement. And when you build engagement, you build attention. And a lot of us, we think we have an attention deficit disorder when really we just have an issue with matching the content that we're trying to take in with our level of engagement. So I want that to be the food for thought for you to think about, well, wait, if I find myself able to pay attention in arenas where the subject itself is interesting, or where the delivery of what is being delivered is interesting, like, to what extent is my level of interest harping on my capacity to attend because I'm spending exponential amount of energy sitting still, right? Because remember, like, when you think about energy management, attention is energy spent, right? Sitting still is energy spent, especially if it's not your predisposition. So you need to think about what it is that you need to spend less energy sitting still, paying attention, and being engaged. Because once you're engaged, it's less effort up front and then more at your disposal to just absorb that information. So this is a little bit of a nerdy aside, but I've been thinking a lot about how to like avoid and decrease passive participation just in my own professional life. And I thought to myself, well, this was a great conversation to just bring online. So I want to have that conversation with you, how you can in and of yourself make a point to drive the learning environments that you're in so that you're not as much of a passive participant. Because I can tell you, if you're active, if you're engaged, then you'll see that your attention is going to increase. So that's the topic of conversation for today. Some food for thought for you. Hopefully that has been interesting, a little nugget of wisdom that you can take on learning about yourself. Self-mastery is about critical thinking, your critical thinking toolkit. And critical thinking is a lot about awareness. And awareness involves the specific cognitions that help us navigate and that help us orient in environments where academics or learning is involved. And when we think about learning, there are specific mechanisms that work in very specific ways that enable each of us to learn. Whether we're learning language, whether we're learning a new topic, whether we're learning a new music. Those aspects of our brain have been deeply researched. We know how they take in and retain information. We know what levels of engagement are required. We know what levels of interest are required for us to really interact and be all in that retention of information. So take that in stride. Learn about yourself by learning about your cognitions, and then leverage that information to excel in environments where you want to excel but find yourself struggling because the engagement factor is impacting your attention factor, which is impacting your ability to succeed. So that was a topic of conversation for today, some food for thought for you as it relates to my stalking situation. No information for you as yet, but you will be the first to know when I do. Thank you again. We'll talk to you soon.